Welcome to the CU 2.0 podcast.
Hi, and welcome to the CU 2.0 podcast with big new ideas about credit unions and conversations about innovative technology with credit union and fintech leaders. This podcast is brought to you by Quillo, the real-time loan syndication network for credit unions, and by your host, longtime credit union and financial technology journalist Robert McGarvey. And now, the CU 2.0 podcast with Robert McGarvey.
I'd expected this to be an AI-free show. Well, let's face it, that just isn't likely in 2025. But the good news is that in this show, Pete Major, Vice President of FinTech Services at CUSO MDT, offers concrete AI use cases at work in MDT. And he also importantly offers cautions about security and the leading AI tools. Security? In a rush to stay abreast of the fast-moving AI universe, there are some credit unions losing sight of the need to be very sure of the security of the tools they use. Maybe. Major provides tips on how to stay secure while using those very same AI tools. It's cautionary information. It's good to process it. Stay safe. But there's a lot more in this show. We talk, for instance, about the need of credit unions to keep security in mind when using any technology tools. If there are flaws, and there have been some doozies in recent years, it's the credit union that will be saddled with the bulk of the blame by both the regulators and the public. On a happier note, Major discusses a suite of tools for small business members at credit unions. And he says the demand for these tools is very, very hot. Question, is offering good tools a path to winning more business members? Just maybe. We closed the show pondering what the developments in Washington, D.C., anything from an end to credit union tax exemption to an end to NCUA might mean for credit union. We also touch on the rising CU interest in merging. There's a lot to unpack in this show. Listen up. So let's talk about one of the things MDT seems to want to talk about, which fascinates me, because I used to talk about this all the time, but it's been pushed aside, I think, by AI. Which is security. And why do you see security as a new an issue that takes new attention?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Robert. Security has been top of mind for us for a long time. We have a dedicated security and threat intelligence team at MDT. And the thing that I think credit unions see front and center is the large number of data breaches that you see on a continuous basis, right? Last year, we just saw this insane number of data breaches that affected multiple partners of credit unions or credit unions. And so it's important that credit unions keep this top of mind, even if it's not as much in the media as it was last year, just because the threat actors are still out there, they're still doing things. Now, we launched a partnership with a security incident and event management company called Blumira last year that just helps credit unions kind of close the gap on cybersecurity risks. Additionally, we have two more partnerships scheduled for later this year, where one of them will assist credit unions in the ransomware space for a tabletop exercise. And then another company we're targeting will provide 24/7 data center management. So even small credit unions have this absolute need to ensure that their systems and their data is protected to protect their brand and reputation. And that risk is not decreasing. We just see it increasing.
If my memory's right, it was about a dozen years ago when NCUA said, hey, guys, you're responsible for the security of your vendors. Don't say, hey, it's not our fault. It's our vendor's fault. No, it's your fault.
Yeah, I think you're right, Robert. And our credit unions approach it from the perspective that if there is a data breach for one of their vendors, they're heavily invested in it because it's a data breach of possibly their data. Our security and threat intelligence team looks at over 100 sources on a daily basis to determine what's going on in the industry, what have the threat actors done. And they distribute that information not only internally to us here at MDT, but they also distribute that information within our client base so that our clients know what's going on with the industry. And they make reports every day available. So it's a never-ending threat. And that's kind of why you need to have partners who are actively looking for that, keeping you apprised of the situation and helping you close those gaps.
Credit unions are playing with a lot of AI tools, ChatGPT, Gemini, and the list goes on and on and on. Have any of those vendors been vetted from a security perspective?
You have to vet these vendors. And I think people are in a state of
well, they're anxious. I got to get, I got to get on this thing, man. Everybody else is 10 miles ahead of me. Even
they
though
want to flip. They want to.
They are not ahead of you. Everybody's still at the start line.
Yeah, they want to flip the flag so that they can remain competitive and that they build those efficiencies. They know that their employees are using their personal devices to interact with Gemini or ChatGPT or whomever. And there is this absolute need to start using these tools. Some of the things that credit unions may not consider is, we're in this highly regulated industry with extremely confidential information that you do not want to get out through hallucinations to non-members, or the wrong information to get out in the wrong hands. And the vendors that are in the industry, in my opinion, haven't done the best job in setting up expectations for security. Some vendors are out there just flipping the flag, turning on generative AI capabilities without giving institutions an opportunity to thoroughly vet those solutions before flipping the flag. Examples of this is, where's my data going? Is my data encrypted in transit? Is my data secure? Is it encrypted at rest? What about PII data? What about PCI data? So there's this whole list of things that credit unions have to consider. And it's not just with the traditional data that they think, the structured data, the data in the fields that they normally expect. It also applies to data on conference calls, right? We're on a conference call right now, and there's tools out there that will record and transcribe your words using natural language processing. And if a credit union is using those tools internally and they're talking to their colleagues on a call about a member account number, where is that member account number going? And is that member account number secure? So knowing where
that's interesting, because I'm recording this call. And you probably got a notice to that effect. I hope you got a notice to that effect.
Yep, I did.
And I also am getting an AI created transcript of the call. And you should have gotten a notice about that too. That's from Zoom, not from me.
Correct.
And but it's nice that you were notified. But what kind of security is there? It's a good question.
Yeah, so there's
I'm not dealing on this show with stuff I view as security
sure.
issues.
I'm not going to tell you my account number or social on the call.
Oh, no. Hey, man, Pete, I need that information.
I know.
I can't post the show unless I have your social security number. And your date of birth, too.
Yeah, I'll give you my mother's maiden name on top.
Great.
Yeah, so these are things that credit unions, sometimes you just don't naturally think of these things when you're thinking of AI, right? You're like, wow, this is a really cool enhancement, right? So we've taken a very conservative approach at MDT on not just allowing flags to flip within softwares without it being vetted by our compliance and security teams.
So what AI tools are you using within MDT?
So we do use the ChatGPT functionality. It's within a limited group of users. We use the Teams license. This is the one where you actually, it's like you're sending data to a website. So it's not, automatically pointed into our network. We are testing out the Copilot AI functionality feature set, paying attention to what it has access to, where does the data go, where does it reside. So that is in a more limited pilot phase right now. But we've largely just been using ChatGPT within the limited set of users that have access to it today.
It's a highly controlled environment, though.
It is, and it has to be. It has to be a controlled environment, given the data, the sensitive data that we have access to.
Yeah. And this mad rush to get current with AI, generative AI. I do worry that some credit unions are skipping over some of the security steps.
And sometimes it's from lack of knowledge. Sometimes, they don't have the technical background to know where everything goes. And I just think this is a huge opportunity for credit unions to reach out to their leagues, to reach out to their peers, their trusted technology partners, to figure out, how are you approaching this in the safest way possible? So this is the time when they need to leverage those consultative partners to help them fill those gaps.
And I would say, tell me if you agree, that right now you can afford to go pretty slowly with AI, since I don't even see the big banks, the money center banks, having an explosive thing. I think Erica, Bank of America, still is pretty clunky. I thought that thing would be on steroids by now. As far as I can tell, it's not. So you can be deliberate about vetting security. There's no rush here. Yeah, you play with ChatGPT on your own personal computer. Knock yourself out. Just don't put credit union information into that computer.
Yeah, I think last year, if you asked me, it was just like you can't run fast enough with generative AI. I think, this year people are definitely being more intentional about what they're using generative AI for. To your point in the last podcast, I think you indicated that there weren't as many hallucinations. You don't see that being as big of a problem.
Right.
And I tend to agree with you. I don't see that being as big of a problem as it probably was initially. But this is a time where credit unions have an opportunity to really gain competencies within generative AI. What is it? What it is? How does it affect them? And be deliberate, to your point, about how they implement that within their credit unions. I do think, some people will tell you that generative AI is a fad. It's going to pass. I really don't think it will be. I've seen too many efficiencies to say you can ignore it. I don't think you can ignore it. I think what you can do this year is educate yourself on what it is, play with it. And you probably talk to people plenty of times about this, but when you're learning about generative AI, it's not just turning on the flag and you're immediately going to gain the efficiencies. You're learning another language. You're learning how to talk to it. You're learning what it can and can't do. And I like to consider it like the really smart coworker on the other side of my cube that I ask for lots of interesting information. So there's just so many things that you can do with generative AI, but it's a learning process and it's not immediate.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think it's a fad. I think, I tell people this is the most important breakthrough really since the World Wide Web. That was 1995. That was a long time ago in computer years.
I was thinking the same thing. And I don't know if you paid attention to some of the AI voices that are out there. Like I was thinking of 11 Labs and just how far it's come in reading text to speech using an AI voice. I think, to lots of people's points, in the future, you will have no idea that you're actually talking to an AI agent. It'll sound just like a human being.
Well, I wonder about the financial institutions that use voice authentication to when they're logging on customers and members into the call center. How reliable is that anymore? I don't know.
I had similar concerns and questions. They're still doing, I think, great business. My guess is they need to stay ahead of the curve. There's nuances within the voices that allow them to identify if it's human or AI generated. But I mean, yeah, the fraudsters, they're not stopping anytime soon. So
they work at this professionally. This is not the maladjusted 14-year-old in a basement.
Right.
These are professional people. And heavens, I think probably in some cases they get paid as much as Google pays its engineers. but they have to earn their keep.
Based on feedback from the data, right? So if they're successful, are they able to get the AI to respond faster and create newer campaigns for fraudulent purposes? That does concern me. But as my security colleague likes to say, new things pop up all the time, and providers in the industry will create responses to that.
They will, but it's not a cool thing, although it's just a lot of their lives for credit union security people. That's
Absolutely.
reactive.
Yeah.
And the bad guy actually has lead time here. the goal is to minimize the lead time, but they always have lead time.
Absolutely. And I mean, and there's a point though where we're always playing catch up at some point with with fraud, whether it's check fraud, card fraud, whatever. There's a point where we're always playing some type of catch up with them. I think the vendors can be somewhat proactive, but fraud providers.
I remember when mobile remote deposit capture rolled out. There was a little learning curve where all the big banks realized that, hey, some people have accounts at multiple institutions, and my heavens, they deposit the same check to all of them.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
But
exactly.
I was writing a story about that, and I talked to one of the three biggest banks in the country, and the person said, and I'm not naming them because this was off the record, we're talking $10,000 here. Come on, give me a break.
Right. Right. So there's a cost benefit analysis to how far they go, right?
Yeah, and they were all working on ways to stop that too, and I think they've gotten very successful at stopping that multiple deposit junk. But it's the person's the point you're like hysterical over lunch money, man.
Well, to us, that would be actually pretty decent money, right?
Navy Federals ain't gonna break much of a sweat over 10 grand.
You're right.
Small credit unions, you bet you don't have a sweat. So let's segue now. Tell me about, and this intrigued me. What are you stressing to your customers, your owners, about what they should be doing to make sure their vendors' security is acceptable? Because it's their job to do this. I don't just ask you, "Hey, did you get a physical this year?" Oh, great. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Oliver,
you got to verify this. Okay, can you have your physician send me the physical, please? Thank you. It's same thing with the security.
Well, just like our credit unions, we're subject to regulation and regulatory audits at MDT. And so, we perform regular due diligence on all of our vendors and partners. And we have to keep that information up to date. So, we'll do a business risk, we'll do a security risk, enterprise architecture risk, technical risk review with these partners. And our credit unions have to do the same thing so that they can stay in compliance with regulators. And when they need some assistance, are not getting the right information, or maybe they're questioning some of the information, we're happy to talk with them about what's going on. And I think that's where the value of a consultative partner comes into play. Maybe the credit union's small enough where they don't know everything technically. They don't know if they've got everything they need. Credit unions have the ability to reach out to their leagues, to reach out to their peers, reach out to companies like MDT to confirm that they're getting the information they need to be successful. We can certainly talk about it on the technical side, but when it comes to compliance, I would certainly make sure the credit unions relying on their compliance experts to ensure that they've got all the due diligence they need to comply with the NCUA or their state examiners.
Well, a trend, and we started seeing this trend 15 years ago, where the criminals are saying, "Geez, trying to crack into Chase is kind of a fool's errand, and we ain't going to do it." But here's this nice little tidy $1 billion credit union. That's not pocket change. And lo and behold, they don't have such good security. So let's go after them. I think that's true. So
we've seen that trend with ransomware. Certainly last year, there were a few credit unions that had breaches and that had ransomware attacks. There is a notion in the industry, it's not a matter of if, but a matter of when, and making sure that you're prepared in the event that something happens that's cybersecurity related. And that's why it's really important that you engage with experts in the cybersecurity field that help you build out your plans to ensure that your institution is properly prepared to respond. That is one of the major reasons why we're partnering with a company that provides tabletop exercises so credit unions can walk through what do they need to do in the event something happens, and they can use that expertise to make sure they're fully prepared and that they've got their flanks covered.
I'm horrified that credit unions still suffer with ransomware. To me, that's just There is this thing called the cloud. It's a useful place to park data.
It is, and it's funny because even if you park your data in the cloud, there's always going to be some type of access point at the credit union, and you just I just don't think
so. All my data is backed up into Google's cloud.
Mm-hmm.
And if my computer were seized, I said, I don't care. I'm just going to wipe this thing out.
Right.
Yeah, I would lose a day restoring things. It would take me at least a day.
Right.
But I wouldn't lose anything at all other than a little time. Now, obviously, I don't have the same quantity of data as a credit union does. So you'd be surprised how many thousands of files I have. they go back years and years and years. They're in formats I don't even have the computer, the software for anymore.
Listen, I'm glad that you at least have it backed up, Robert. Some people don't even back up their data.
So now let's switch topics to, and this intrigued me in an email I got, business services. And for several years now, I've been hearing credit unions saying, "Oh, we're going to up our game in getting small business members." Community banks aren't very good; they're dwindling. We can fill this gap. Okay, makes sense. Most of the ones I talk to off the record are not really pleased with the progress they've made. And you're suggesting, or MDT is suggesting, that part of the reason for that, perhaps, is that you don't offer the business member services that a community bank is used to. They've been offering these services for 30 years. Am I understanding that right?
Yeah, there's certainly a challenge with, you can't use necessarily existing consumer retail focused systems to properly service a business customer, right? Credit unions traditionally have had a limited impact. Certainly the smaller credit unions have had a limited impact in attracting SMB customers or members. And so at MDT, we've launched Banno Business. It's part of our digital package that allows credit unions to offer business services digitally to their small and medium-sized businesses. We also have a partnership, and we are an investor in a QSO called True Treasury. And True Treasury, they provide consulting to credit unions on how to set up business programs within their institution. And the people that lead over at True Treasury were recovering bankers. And they worked in the large banks that did go out and attract small and medium-sized businesses. So sometimes it's the systems that you don't have that can support what you're looking to support to attract your small businesses, but it's also sometimes the lack of knowledge and competency within the credit union, small business competency within the credit union to attract those members. I think this was a bigger deal probably last year, as credit unions were looking to diversify their non-interest income because there were pending regulations coming up that may have limited the fee income they would have gotten from consumers. So they needed a way to diversify, and a way to get there might be going towards the small business route where they're used to paying, a regular checking monthly maintenance fee or or additional fees related to small businesses. And so between True Treasury and offering a digital business banking package, we aim to help our credit unions be more competitive in that landscape.
Who owns Banno at this point?
Banno's owned by Jack Henry. So it is the Jack Henry. So Jack Henry is our strategic partner. We offer, I have probably 40 to 50 products from Jack Henry to our clients. And Banno is their premier online and digital platform.
Does it only run on Scimitar Jack Henry?
It connects directly just to Jack Henry cores. So Scimitar, Silver Lake, CIF 2020.
Yeah. Now, what kind of interest are you getting from your customers, your members?
We can't roll it out fast enough. I wouldn't say that applies out to all of our credit unions, but the people that are very interested in it want it right now. And so there's definitely interest. I would, our average credit union size ranges anywhere from 50 million in assets to 2 billion in assets. And certainly as you get higher up on the asset food chain, you're going to desire to have more of those SMB services. But it depends on where the credit union's at and what strategy they're pursuing. And it just varies from credit union to credit union.
I agree there was more intense interest in business banking at credit unions a year or so ago, but I think that's still percolating around in credit unions, particularly credit unions of a certain size.
Yeah, I was just thinking, when you get to the smaller sizes, the credit unions are obviously focused on retail and consumer banking versus the SMBs. I always think to myself, there was a credit union CEO in the Southeast who was mentioning in a periodical her, going for the blue ocean strategy and paying attention, to something that's unique to your credit union that serves the membership. And I think her uniqueness was related to members that are like avid dog owners and, creating services related to dog owners, whether, I don't know, maybe it's a pup cup that when they visit the branch or, just things that really bring that is unique to that credit union that really fills a niche for that credit union. And, when you think about small businesses or small business services, everybody's going for the same non-interest income market. You just have to make sure that what you're going for is unique and different, that these members will be attracted to your institution.
Does MDT have a perspective on the merger environment in credit unions?
Yeah, it's growing. It's growing. There's all kinds of merger activity that is constantly occurring within the credit industry. In credit unions continue.
But it's more intense than it's ever been. I've been watching mergers for some years now, and originally 99% of the mergers where there was a dying credit union, NCUA put a gun to the head of the CEO of a much bigger credit union and said, you're going to take that one over. And he said, okay. Now we're seeing healthy credit unions merge. I mean, this is a whole different environment.
Yeah, I can't speak to the nuance of the healthy versus unhealthy. I can just tell you the numbers are increasing. And so our merger teams they have more than enough work to keep them busy for a very long time when it comes to mergers.
What do they do?
So they work with credit unions and merging in the systems or merging out the systems into the new core system. So for example, say one of our clients, sometimes they'll either merge in an existing credit union into their institution. So our teams will consult with those, the acquired institution and mapping their data and bringing their data and converting their data into our data center. Sometimes credit unions will purchase a bank. Sometimes they'll purchase a bank branch. And so in that situation, we're converting over that data into our data center. Sometimes one of our credit unions might merge out of MDT into a different credit union. And in that situation, we're providing the deconversion data that allows them to bring that data over to their new processor.
So, yeah, I looked at the statistics the other day. Merger activity is intense right now, and we're seeing more mergers or acquisitions of banks. So it's gotten a whole bunch more complicated.
It's been busy. We expect it to continue to get busier. And just from my perspective on the technology side, I wanted to point out, more than 20 years ago, credit unions had to worry about maybe 10 pieces of technology within their data center, right? They had their core system, they had their network, they might have had their voice response unit, and maybe a few other items, networky things included. Now here we are 25 years later, and we counted the number of distinct market categories for credit union technology. It was over 150. And I tried to narrow that down to what I was like, well, what do you think is the minimum number of market category technologies a credit union has to have in order to be competitive? And I counted 80. And so if you think about it, you're just okay, you have this model of charging interest for loans, and you get your differential between your deposits in terms of dividends, but you have all these providers that you're paying, and this huge variety of vendors that you have to, as we talked about earlier, to due diligence on, the cost of operating a credit union just continues to increase, and the complexity continues to increase. And so it doesn't surprise me that credit unions continue to merge given this current operating environment, certainly from a technology perspective.
Well, I remember seeing data that said, I think it was 30 years ago, 90% of a credit union's technology spend was related to the core system. And probably the other 10% was handheld calculators, telephones, and typewriters.
Right.
Like that.
Sure.
Now we have entirely independent systems that run in tandem with the core, but not in the core, et cetera, et cetera. And you have, and back 30 years ago, the core provider wants to provide all the software that ran on the core. And honestly, that was probably the only way to do it without going bankrupt, was to use their technology, no matter how bad it was. It's just use it, shut up, use it. And that's certainly no longer the case. It's become, the core is well under 50% of a credit union's technology spend today.
Easily, there's a lot of features that, I mean, you could say in my head that they've destacked the core. So, you have to have all of these products in order to have sort of a functioning credit union. And there's good and bad with that, right? The good is that you get more choices, you get more variety, you get more innovation. The bad side of it is then you have to maintain all of this. And when something breaks, it's not intuitive of what part broke. And you spend all this time in trying to figure out, okay, well, is it the widget, or is it the core, or what's the problem? And, if you're a credit union that doesn't have a strong technical background in the technologies you're supporting, it can be very challenging to get to figuring out what needs to be fixed. And even when you're talking to the provider, sometimes they don't know, or sometimes there's finger pointing. And, again, I can't overstate the value of that, having either technologists that can help you navigate that, or partners that can help you navigate those situations are critical for even large credit unions can't handle some of the nuance and the deep technical issues that pop up daily.
I'm an old guy. I remember 1985, you're having computer problems. You call up the hardware vendor. They talk to you for a little while and they say, you got a problem. That's a software problem. Then you call up the software vendor and they say, you got a problem, but that's a hardware problem.
It hasn't changed. It hasn't changed, Robert.
No, it's probably gotten more pronounced. The core guy says, no. That's that's a big problem, but that's not core. No.
Exactly. Yes, it's exactly right.
And they might be telling the truth. I mean,
no, right. There's so many points for failure along these API lines. It can be exhausting to try to go through the checklist to figure out what's going on.
Are you, as MDT, getting questions about the current political environment and what that might augur for credit unions?
I wouldn't say that we're getting questions. We are intensely interested in what's going on with the CFPB. We were thinking that, if this administration won, which they did, then we would expect, regulations to be dialed back. We would expect, not as much of a push to reduce fee income. And, if you asked me last year, I was expecting rates to go down this year, frankly. And so we were working on making sure that our lending technologies were beefed up, and anything that was missing from our technology portfolio related to lending was ready to go for this year so that credit can process more loans. But yeah, things haven't worked out the way exactly we thought it was going to work out. It's sort of regulation related, but it's sort of not. Fedwire, I don't know, Robert, if you've been talking a lot about the ISO 20022 enhancement that's coming out, but we've been heads down trying to make sure that we were ready and our credits were ready for the new wire format change from FAME, and that got delayed. And while we're excited that it got delayed, we are ready for that project to be over. So, even though there's sort of a pause on the regulation side, we probably need a little bit of room so that we can accomplish some of these technology changes that are coming down, Fedwire being one of them.
How important is Fedwire to credit unions?
Well, so Fedwire that's the file format that everybody uses to communicate wires, right? And so,
All right.
in the United States, and so when they were changing from FAME, and I don't know what the acronym stands for, when they were changing from FAME to ISO 20022, any provider that deals with those files or the communications of those files, they're likely impacted. And so, and that includes credit unions, right? And their core providers or whoever does the wire originations for them, they're impacted. Things change. They change fields, and they don't seem like major changes, like when I look at them, but it's still a big change. And whenever you're doing something with money, Robert, you cannot mess up. Like there's no room for error, especially with the wire system. And so when they delayed, we just got notice yesterday that they delayed it. And so midsummer, assuming that they stay on target, you'll see the wire formats change starting midsummer.
So any other issues coming out of Washington that are concerning MDT?
We need clarity on what's going to happen. We're subject to NCUA regulation. We need to know what's going to happen there. It'll be interesting.
What do you mean?
Well, our data centers are subject to regulation. We
Right.
we have auditors that come in. So if something's going to change along those lines, if we don't have clarity about what is our responsibility for due diligence, as an example, like we just talked about, or what is our responsibility when it comes to how we maintain our data centers, the protection of our data, we need to keep that in mind. We're also paying attention, and I'm sure everybody else in the industry is too, creating taxation, right? So if credit unions start getting taxed, what does that mean that's not great for credit unions, and that certainly won't be great for technology providers that support credit unions as well. It's just funny to hear bankers' opinions on credit unions, right? So I was at a conference, and I was there. I told a banker what I did, and I work in the credit union industry, and there was a lot of hostility coming from them from the fact that credit unions, the tax situation with credit unions, and I think it's funny because these are the same banks that will sell their branches or sell their banks to credit unions to be acquired, right? So they're making some money.
And anytime a credit union buys a bank, I always say the owners of that bank did not have a gun pointed at their heads.
Right.
The owners of the bank made a business decision that the credit union was offering more money than any other bank was, so they took the deal, man.
Exactly.
The other issue that I think is, I never would have thought this was possible, but I hear rumbling that NCUA is on life support right now.
That's scary, right? And what, Robert, are you hearing that you think that they might merge with the FDIC?
They might become a desk in the FDIC.
Oh my gosh.
Wow. That's what I'm hearing. Now, this is all early days speculation. Sure. Yeah, I don't know, but but if you're trying to reduce government headcount, just say throw a few desks in the FDIC and call it a day. Am I advocating for that? I'm not, but I could see if I were running around with a baseball cap, wearing black clothes, I might think that was a good idea. So yeah, we shall see. So I never thought we'd be having conversations like this. That I'd be having conversations like this. I thought this was like absolute paranoia, but here we are. Paranoia has become reality.
I agree.
So you got anything you want to add?
I just expect technology providers to continue to up their game when it comes to serving their clients. On our side, we launched a mobile app last year that allows our credit unions to open support tickets, chat with support representatives, and see the system statuses for the things that we host for them, which we were super excited about. We recently did a rebrand where it's a refresh of our current brand.
Before we go, think hard about how you can help support this podcast so we can do more interviews with more thoughtful leaders in the credit union world. What we're trying to figure out here in these podcasts is what's next for credit unions. What can they do to really, really, really make a difference in the financial scene? Can't all be mega banks, can it? It's my hope it won't all be mega banks. It'll always be a place for credit unions. That's what we're discussing here. So figure out how you can help. Get in touch with me. This is rjmcgarvey@gmail.com. Robert McGarvey again. That's rjmcgarvey@gmail.com. Get in touch. We'll figure out a way that you can help. We need your support. We want your support. We thank you for your support. The CU 2.0 podcast.